Okay, so I'm going to show you guys how to set up IK on the arm. This is the more traditional use of IK. The IK that we did on the legs was not really as traditional. It actually takes away some flexibility, but adds in predictability. And this setup is, you can find a million places online. This will be mine, I guess. But what it is, I got the clavicle, the shoulder, elbow, wrist, and hand. And we're going to put IK from the shoulder joint to the wrist joint. So to do that, all we do is go to the skeleton IK handle tool option box. We want to use the rotate plane solver. Then we're going to select the shoulder and then select the wrist. Now before I do that, if I go to the top view, you'll notice that I have bent the arm by default. What that's going to do is it's going to align the rotate plane solver so that it points straight back from my character. If you don't do that, then the direction that the elbow will bend will be unpredictable. It'll be whatever Maya chooses, and it can be hard to change that after the fact. So, clicking the shoulder, then the wrist, and I get the IK handle created. And you'll see that the white arrow on the rotate plane solver is pointing straight back to the back of my character. Now we want to be able to control this rotate plane solver IK handle. We want to be able to control the direction of the bend of the elbow. Right now it goes straight back by default. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a locator, and you can choose any sort of object you want to. And I'm going to snap it to the elbow. And that's key. You want the rotate plane solver to be exactly on the elbow when you create it. Then I'm going to deselect it, create a group, so you can see what's going on over here. I'm going to parent that group to the locator. Going to zero out its translate values. Thought I put 0 in there. There it goes. I didn't have num lock pressed. So now it's at the exact same location as the locator 1. So I'm going to drop it out, and I'm going to parent the locator to it. Now, with that being the case, I'm going to use locator 1. I'm going to select it. I'm going to shift select the IK handle. Then I'm going to go to constrain, pull vector. You can go to the option box if you want to. You'll see that there's not any options for this other than wait. So we'll click add, and it adds it in there. Okay, so now wherever I move this locator, the elbow is going to point at it. You see that? Okay. So the animator is not going to want this locator to be directly on top of the elbow by default. So that's why I put it inside this null group. So I grab the null group, and I can translate it back to some reasonable distance away from the elbow. And now when I select the actual locator, which is the arm, oh my goodness, pull vector constraint, so I'm going to rename it. And anyway, the translates of this object and the transforms are all 0, and the scale is set to 1. That's default, and that's good, because now we can move it wherever we want to, and the animator, if he messes up, can set it back to 0, and it's going to go back to its default location, where we wanted it to be as a rigger. Okay, so that's all it takes to do that portion. Now we need to create a control for the wrist. So I'm going to select that handle, going to vert snap it, I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees, I'm putting it at the wrist location. I think I'll go ahead and scale it down a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to freeze the rotate and scale only. Modify, freeze, and deselect translate, and we click apply. Okay, now I need to create another null group. Press Ctrl G. I'm going to translate that. Let me put it at the exact same location actually as the NURB circle. Zero it out so it goes to that point in space. Unparent it. Basically reverse the parenting. Okay, so now my controlling object sits at the exact same place as the wrist was in the bind pose. It's important that we can keep our character in bind pose even after it's rigged. It just makes life more simple. Okay, so we'll delete history on this. And we need to parent this IK handle to that circle. Okay, so now I can move that circle around and the arm is going to follow. And I can zero it out. It's going to go back to its default location. Okay, now the hand we don't want to rotate with the control. And it's not. But we don't want it to rotate and be manipulated by the IK handle either. And it is. So what we need to do is create an IK from the wrist to the hand, and that's going to be a single chain solver IK. So I'm going to hide the wrist IK. Let me go back to my skeleton IK handle tool and change it to a single chain solver. And I'm going to select the wrist and then select the hand joint. And these could be at different locations. I just put one in there as a kind of a placeholder so I could show you guys this. Okay, and then we want to parent that also to our control. So this is the wrist animation control. I'll go ahead and rename it. Wrist anim. And we can hide that handle. And now, wherever I move this control, the hand stays oriented to that control instead of obeying what the arm IK tells it to do. And I can point the elbow where I want it to point. And I can get things back into default position. So there it is, out of position. I can select both of these objects and zero out their translates, and there it is back in bind pose. Okay, so that'll do for this tutorial. That's the IkArm setup is relatively simple compared to the foot.